Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're taking a look at something I know a lot of you have been asking about: natural teeth whitening.
Yeah, this is a good one.
So we found this great article called Natural Teeth Whitening: Methods for a Brighter Smile. And
This has some good stuff in it.
I know, right? I mean, let's be real, who doesn't want a brighter smile? But I know I'm always a little bit wary of all the harsh chemicals in a lot of those whitening products, so
Yeah.
I was really excited to dig into this and see what kind of natural options are out there.
Me too.
So, first things first, the article really emphasizes how important good oral hygiene is as, like, the base
Absolutely.
before you even think about whitening.
It's funny, right? You think teeth whitening, you think like, oh, I need some magic potion or something.
Right.
But really, it all starts with just taking good care of your teeth in the first place.
Makes total sense. It's like, building a house, you need a solid foundation before you start decorating. But sometimes I think we forget about those basics. So just as a refresher, what are we talking about when we say good oral hygiene? What are the non-negotiables?
Well, the article lists all the usual suspects.
Yeah,
Brushing twice a day, flossing daily,
of course.
using mouthwash, and replacing your toothbrush regularly, all that good stuff. But what I thought was really interesting is that it specifically calls out fluoride-free toothpaste as like a recurring theme in the natural whitening world.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Is there, like, a reason for that? Why fluoride-free?
Yeah, there's a theory that fluoride can actually contribute to staining, especially that kind of yellowish tint that some people get on their teeth.
Interesting.
Now, it is a bit controversial. The science isn't totally settled on that one,
Right.
but it's definitely something to be aware of.
Okay, so good oral hygiene is our base.
Our foundation.
Now, let's get to the fun stuff, the actual whitening methods. The article talks about oil pulling, which, to be honest, sounds a little out there to me.
Right.
It's like an ancient Ayurvedic practice, right?
Yeah, it is. And, anything with that ancient secret kind of vibe always gets my attention. But there actually is some science behind it, which is cool.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break it down for me. What exactly is oil pulling, and how could it possibly whiten your teeth?
So basically, you swish oil around in your mouth. Usually coconut oil is the most popular, and you do this for like 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah, I know, right?
a little intense.
It sounds a little strange, but studies have actually shown that doing this, especially with coconut oil, can seriously reduce the amount of harmful bacteria in your mouth.
So is the idea that the oil's like pulling out the bad stuff?
Exactly. And one of those bad things is this bacteria called Streptococcus mutans, which is a major culprit behind cavities and staining.
Oh, wow.
So the oil's fatty acids, they basically trap these bacteria, and then when you spit out the oil, you're spitting out all that gunk too.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But just to be clear, you do spit the oil out, right? You're not swallowing this stuff.
Definitely not. Swallowing that would kind of defeat the purpose. And it's super important to remember that this isn't a replacement for your regular brushing and flossing routine.
Of course.
Just an extra tool.
Okay, good to know. All right, let's move on to a method that I think a lot of people have probably heard of before: baking soda and peroxide.
Oh yeah, the classic.
I've definitely heard of this, but I'm curious to know more about the how and the why it actually works.
So baking soda is mildly abrasive, which means it helps to gently polish away surface stains.
So it's like a little scrub for your teeth.
That's a great way to put it. And then hydrogen peroxide, which is a natural antibacterial, helps to break down those stain-causing molecules.
Oh, I see. So they work together.
Sure, exactly.
I can see why that's such a popular method, but I also imagine that there's a risk of overdoing it with this one, right?
Definitely. That's a big point that the article emphasizes. If you use baking soda too much, you can actually damage your enamel.
So how much is too much? Like, how often is it safe to use this method?
They recommend using a baking soda and peroxide paste no more than 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
Remember, gentle and less frequent is always better than aggressive and too often.
Got it. Now, this next section of the article was a real surprise to me. It's all about eating your way to whiter teeth.
Oh, yeah.
I'm definitely intrigued. Tell me more about that.
So this is where the power of crunchy fruits and vegetables comes in.
The article specifically mentions apples, carrots, celery. What is it about those that helps with whitening?
Well, it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. First, when you're chewing those crunchy foods, it stimulates saliva production, which naturally helps to cleanse your teeth.
Oh, interesting.
And then second, the fibrous texture of those foods acts like a gentle scrub, helping to remove plaque and debris that can lead to staining.
It's like nature's toothbrush.
Exactly.
Now, there are 2 specific fruits that the article highlights: Strawberries and pineapple. What's so special about those?
All right, so strawberries contain malic acid, which is a natural whitening agent.
Ah.
It helps break down those surface stains. Actually, I've heard of people rubbing strawberries directly on their teeth.
Oh, yeah, me too. Is that a good idea?
Well, it might give you a little bit of a temporary brightening effect.
Right.
But it's not something you want to do long term. The acid in strawberries can erode your enamel if you use it too often.
That makes sense. Okay, what about pineapple?
Pineapple contains bromelain, which is an enzyme known for its stain-removing properties. And, this is actually why you sometimes see pineapple juice as an ingredient in natural whitening toothpastes and products.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now we have to talk about activated charcoal.
Right.
It's been, everywhere lately.
It's so trendy.
But I've also heard some mixed reviews about it. So what's the deal with activated charcoal and teeth whitening?
Okay, so activated charcoal is incredibly absorbent. That's why it's used in, skincare and even water filtration. And when it comes to your teeth, it basically acts like a magnet, pulling out stains from the surface of your teeth.
Wow, so how do you actually use it? Do you just brush with it like you would regular toothpaste?
It's a little different. You wet your toothbrush, you dip it in the activated charcoal powder, and then gently brush your teeth. It can be a little messy.
I can imagine.
But the results can be really impressive.
Now, I think the article mentioned some downsides to using activated charcoal, right?
Yeah, and those are definitely important to highlight. Just like baking soda, activated charcoal can be abrasive, so you really want to use it sparingly. They recommend no more than once or twice a week. Otherwise, you risk wearing down your enamel, which makes your teeth weaker and actually more susceptible to staining and other damage. It's like, imagine using a really harsh scrub on delicate skin.
Okay, that's a good analogy. So we've got oil pulling, baking soda and peroxide, crunchy fruits and veggies, activated charcoal. What else is in our natural whitening toolkit?
Let's talk about apple cider vinegar. This is another one that's really powerful, but you have to be careful with it.
Oh, interesting. I use apple cider vinegar for, a million things.
I know, right?
But I've never actually thought about using it on my teeth.
Me neither, until I read this article.
So how does it even work?
Apple cider vinegar is a natural disinfectant, and because it's acidic, it can help with stains too. But this is where the big caution flag comes in. Apple cider vinegar is very acidic, and if it comes in direct contact with your teeth, it can actually damage your enamel.
So how do you use it safely?
The article suggests diluting a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in a cup of water, and then you swish that around for about 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Dilution is really key here. You never want to use undiluted apple cider vinegar on your teeth.
It's like lemon juice, right? Good for a quick boost, but too much can be harmful.
Exactly. Same idea. Both lemon juice and apple cider vinegar, because they're so acidic, can weaken your enamel over time if you use them too much.
Okay, good to know. So apple cider vinegar, powerful tool, but handle with care. What else does the article talk about?
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the other side of whitening. Not just removing stains, but building strong enamel that's more resistant to stains in the first place.
Right.
And the key player here is calcium.
Oh, calcium. This takes me back to those Got Milk commercials.
Exactly. Dairy is definitely a great source of calcium, cheese, yogurt, milk, all those good things. But, for people who don't do dairy, there are also some less obvious sources of calcium that are really good for your teeth.
Like what?
Leafy greens. Think kale, spinach, collard greens. They're all packed with calcium.
Huh, good to know. So we've talked about a lot of things that can help whiten teeth naturally, but let's talk about the things to avoid.
Oh yeah, the staining culprits.
What are some of the usual suspects?
You probably already know most of them. Coffee, tea, red wine.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely on my list.
Dark sodas, berries, soy sauce, tomato-based sauces. All those things can really leave their mark on your pearly whites.
So is the message here that you have to completely avoid all these things if you want a whiter smile?
Not necessarily. It's all about being mindful. The article emphasizes that rinsing your mouth with water after you have any of those staining foods or drinks can make a big difference.
Okay, that's easy enough. Any other tips for minimizing stains?
Well, this might sound really obvious, but drinking plenty of water throughout the day is one of the best things you can do for your teeth. It helps wash away those food particles and bacteria, and it prevents dry mouth, which can actually make staining worse.
And staying hydrated is good for you in general.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
All right, before we move on, there's one more thing from the article that I really want to touch on, and that's the DIY toothpaste recipe.
Yes.
This seems like such a fun and easy way to kind of take control of your oral health and experiment with natural ingredients.
It is. And it's so simple. Coconut oil, baking soda, and then a few drops of peppermint oil for flavor.
Those are all things that I usually have at home anyway.
Right.
I love that you can just, whip up your own toothpaste. It's a very DIY approach, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're combining the whitening power with fresh breath, which is always a plus.
Oh, for sure.
Just remember what we were talking about earlier with the baking soda moderation is key. You don't want to overdo it and end up damaging your enamel.
Right. A little goes a long way. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about good oral hygiene, whole bunch of different natural whitening methods.
You've been busy.
I know, right? So as we head into the next part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, patience is key. Natural whitening takes time.
Right.
It's a much gentler and often more sustainable approach than those harsh chemical treatments, but it doesn't happen overnight.
That's true.
Second, never underestimate the importance of good oral hygiene. It's the foundation upon which everything else builds.
Definitely.
And finally, always do your research and listen to your body. What works for one person might not work for another, and it's really important to be mindful of any potential side effects.
That's great advice.
So, be informed and be cautious.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into natural teeth whitening.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned.
As we've been talking about all these different approaches to natural teeth whitening, it's really struck me that this goes beyond just aesthetics.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. It's like oral health is a reflection of overall well-being, right?
Exactly. We talk about avoiding sugary drinks for whiter teeth, but that's good advice for your whole body, right?
Yeah.
And the focus on natural ingredients aligns with a growing awareness of what we put both in and on our bodies these days.
That's such a good point. This whole deep dive has definitely made me more mindful of those connections for sure.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How something as seemingly simple as wanting a brighter smile can lead you down this path of exploring holistic health.
Totally. And speaking of exploring, one thing that I found really interesting in the article was that DIY toothpaste recipe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That caught my eye, too.
It just seems so simple and accessible, Coconut oil, baking soda, peppermint oil. Those are things that a lot of people probably already have at home.
Right. And it's kind of empowering to realize that you can potentially take charge of your oral health with ingredients that you trust and that you know where they come from.
I love that idea. It really tacks into that whole DIY movement, which is all about, being informed and making conscious choices rather than just relying on mass-produced solutions.
Couldn't agree more. But let's be realistic for a moment.
Okay, go on.
Some of these methods, like oil pulling for 20 minutes every day, require a fair bit of commitment,
Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure I could commit to swishing oil around in my mouth for that long every single day.
Yeah, it's really about finding what fits into your lifestyle and your preferences.
Right.
Maybe oil pulling becomes your, Sunday self-care ritual or something.
Right.
Whereas a quick apple cider vinegar rinse is more your weekday style.
I like that. It's about making it sustainable for the long haul, right? And that's where the article's emphasis on understanding each method's pros and cons really comes in.
Absolutely. It's about making informed choices that align with your individual needs and goals. For instance, knowing that activated charcoal is super absorbent, but can also be abrasive if overused is crucial.
Right. It's all about finding that balance. But before we get too carried away with all this, I think it's important to remind everyone that we're not dentists.
Yes, absolutely.
This deep dive is purely for informational purposes.
Right. This is not professional medical advice.
If you're serious about whitening your teeth, consulting a dental professional is always the best first step.
Absolutely. They can assess your individual needs, advise on the most appropriate methods for you, and help you avoid any potential risks, too.
Because what works for one person might not be suitable for another.
Exactly. Everyone's oral health is unique, and a dentist can provide that personalized guidance.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the importance of good oral hygiene as a foundation to a whole range of natural whitening methods. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that natural teeth whitening is a journey, not a quick fix.
That makes sense. It's about making those gradual changes, incorporating healthy habits, and being patient with the process.
And remember, a healthy smile is a beautiful smile, regardless of its exact shade.
I love that. It's so much more empowering than chasing some unrealistic ideal of perfect whiteness,
And this leads me to something we haven't really touched on yet. We've talked about all these external factors like food and hygiene, but what about the stuff we can't control?
You mean like dot genetics?
Exactly. Stay tuned because in part 3, we're going to unravel the role of genetics in tooth color and explore how to embrace our natural smiles.
All right, we're back, ready to finish up our deep dive into natural teeth whitening.
Absolutely. And we ended the last part talking about genetics, which I think is a really fascinating aspect of all of this.
It is, right. We've talked about all these things you can do to try to brighten your smile, but what about the things that are just, out of your control, like your genes?
Well, the truth is genetics plays a massive role in determining your natural tooth color. I mean, some people are just predisposed to having brighter or darker teeth, just like some people have brown eyes and some people have blue eyes.
That makes a lot of sense. So just like you inherit your eye color, you inherit your tooth color.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so I guess if someone has naturally yellowish teeth, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have bad oral hygiene.
Not at all. It could just be their genetic makeup. And I think this is where, the conversation about self-acceptance and body positivity really comes in.
I agree. It's about recognizing that there's a whole spectrum of natural tooth shades out there, and that's perfectly okay.
We don't all have to have perfectly white teeth to have a healthy and beautiful smile.
So how do we kind of balance this, this acceptance of our natural tooth color with the desire to maybe brighten things up a bit?
I think that's where a holistic approach comes in. We can't change our genes, but we can focus on the things that we can control.
Right. So it's about kind of working with what you've got and using those natural methods we've been discussing to enhance rather than transform your smile.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between embracing your individuality and taking proactive steps to care for your oral health.
I think it also goes back to what you were saying earlier, having realistic expectations, right?
Totally. Natural teeth whitening, it's a journey, not a quick fix.
It's a process.
It is. It's about making gradual, healthy changes over time. And honestly, I think it's so much more empowering to focus on the things that you can control and to feel good about your unique smile rather than trying to chase some unattainable ideal,
Yeah, for sure.
It's about shifting your mindset from one of striving for perfection to one of celebrating your individuality, I think.
I love that. Well said. Well, I think that just about wraps up our deep dive into natural teeth whitening. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a really interesting journey exploring all these different methods and perspectives.
Before we go, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are maybe thinking about embarking on their own quest for a brighter, healthier smile?
I would just say, remember that knowledge is power. The more you understand about your body, the better equipped you are to make informed decisions about your health and well-being. So keep learning, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep smiling.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. And until next time, keep those pearly whites sparkling.